Island?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I got the recording
Because that
going.
was kind of like the model of post-war, massive housing building.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you think about it, the farsightedness back then no longer exists, I think, in the federal government or in Congress or in the White House, to be able to say, look, we need to do something. We need to benefit. There were 7 million men and women who served in World War II. 7 million, a phenomenal number, and it was a phenomenal program. In fact, I don't know, Frank, if your son owns his house out in Fort Carson, but our son bought his house with the VA, and it's still a wonderful program.
And my son owns this house. I don't know. They were involved in Colorado Springs, but he told me the other day that his oldest boy can go to college on the GI Bill.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that's what we're hoping. And we have a 13-year-old granddaughter, and we're hoping that that program stays in existence. Because it's incredibly beneficial, and we've been putting money away for her education. But if she doesn't need it, then I don't know. This have you ever heard of a 529 plan?
No.
It's a college tuition program that you can set up for your children or grandchildren or anybody, and it grows. It's like an IRA. It grows without any ongoing taxes, and then you pay taxes only on the gain. But it's a great way to help finance kids' college. Hey, Gary.
Hey, Gary.
Morning.
And
Gary, back home, Gary.
Oh,
Frank,
and so
thank you
did
very much for a wonderful time.
Well, it was great to see you, and other than on Zoom.
It was
It's not bad to see you on Zoom too, but it was better.
It was wonderful to see you and to see where you live. And thank you for the book. Actually, there's an article in Commonweal magazine by Luke Timothy Johnson on this guy Thomas Halleck. I got to read the book. The article.
Book's great. Yeah.
But we had a wonderful time, and especially with Frank, and my friend Harry Gregg was very impressed. We had a great time. It was wonderful.
And so who's this Harry? Who's the Harry guy?
Harry Gregg is a priest friend of mine that I met. The first year as clergy education director, we met in San Diego. He was from Lake Charles, Louisiana, that diocese, and was clergy ed director there. And we both went to this convention. It's called the organization is or was called NOCERC, the National. It's a moniker, the National Organization for the Continuing Education of Roman Catholic Clergy. It was an organization that was for priests who were heads of clergy formation in their dioceses, and they had a convention every year, which was a great experience in education itself. And Harry and I met the first year that I was, and it had to be, that I forget now, 19, I don't know what, when, in the 70s or 80s. We've been friends for 30 years, 40 years, and he loves to travel, and he's a very bright guy. 3 times now when that diocese had a vacancy of a bishop, the priest elected him to be the administrator of the diocese. So, but he loves to travel, and so we met in Boston. And he landed 15 minutes before I did. Then we drove to where Frank lives in Regina Clary, which is a great place, Frank. And
that's a nice place, yeah.
Wonderful, yeah. So we went out to dinner with Frank and had a great meal, a nice Negroni. Harry had 2, I only had 1. I broke the rule, and then the next day we drove to Connecticut to some priest friends who were on a sabbatical with us in 2002. One's from Boston, who Frank knows, named George Morin, and the other's a guy named Ned Ryan from New York. And Ned has a little place on a lake called Lake Pocatapog. It's near Hartford, and I guess he basically grew up there as a kid, and he has roots there. And very rustic. It was hot and humid. I'm not used to humidity, and it was brutal for me anyway. Harry's from Lake Charles, Louisiana, so he was cool.
Yeah.
But so a couple of nights there, then we went to Cape Cod. We got a priest friend there named Jim Houston, who was head of a priestly renewal program called Emmaus, and that's how I got to know him. And he has a priest friend named Tim Brewer, and we stayed at the condo, Tim's condo in Cape Cod, spent 3 or 4 days there, then went to Providence, actually East Greenwich, Rhode Island, with 2 days with a fellow named Bob Evans, who was the head of our sabbatical program in 2002 in Rome, and he became the auxiliary bishop of Providence, and he retired about a year ago. So we spent a couple of nights with him. So I got back Wednesday night. I still got a little bit of jet lag in me, and I got a funeral today at 1. So anyway, back to work. So we had a great time. I appreciate it.
I'm sorry that you are so housebound all the time, Gary. You need to figure a way to get out and around a little bit better.
Yeah, the purpose was not to sightsee. The purpose was to visit friends. That was the purpose, and that's what we did.
Good for you.
Quite a few in, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and people I've not seen
Ever.
any of them.
Ever.
Well, I'd never seen Frank.
Ever. Yeah.
And I had not seen Jim Houston in, I don't know, 10 or 12 years. And the other two I saw last year in Rome. So Harry had not seen them for many years. So we had a good time.
And so, Johnny, what was your week like?
Well, doctor visits, Kaiser is incredibly cautious. I've got a hernia surgery upcoming, but cardiologists and all kinds of tests, they want to cover every base before they'll even schedule this hernia surgery. You might know it was scheduled, and then I took a fall and had a concussion, so they put it off again. So it's a challenge because I really have to hold the damn thing in every time I laugh or cough or sneeze or do anything exertion. So I've been careful, but blessed with my sister Gail and my daughter Krista and my brother Mike. So
And so you're not wearing a belt, one of those belts like workers do to kind of keep their back in line?
It's just like summer.
I'll ask about it. I am not.
Oh, okay.
Using my right hand. Since I've got the podium here, Ned, today starts Hispanic Heritage Month.
Really?
Hello. My senior center has a little newspaper, and they mentioned that it goes from today until October 15. You might be interested to see, or I'll send you some of what I gather.
That sounds cool.
That's
I'm oblivious. A couple of days ago, George Ferret called me and wished me happy Grandfather's Day. But I was really happy about it. I guess I'm, out to lunch, I guess.
No, last weekend was Grandfather's Weekend, I think.
Was
Grandfather's Day. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. And I just got a call from, or what do you call him? Text from my son saying, "Do you want to do it today?" So I'm going to go see the kids. Darlene and I are going to enjoy it.
Good for you. And so what's your week been like, Ned? Doctor's visits again?
I didn't know, but I had to do a whole bunch of doctor's things, fill out, every time not every time, but very often, you're going to get a procedure or just an X-ray or a CD, what they call them, CTs, and you got to fill out these 12 pages of stuff they already know and have and never look at. But I registered for physical therapy. My right hand is kind of thrashed and I need to fix it. I have a friend who I inherited from Mike Clements, who's been diagnosed with what do you call it? Dementia.
Yeah, what we all exhibit every Friday.
And I've been visiting him, and it's very hard because I'll ask a question and he'll look at me and pause, and he'll look away, and I'll answer my question, and he says, "Yeah, yeah," and it's very, very hard to experience that. George Ferrick some time ago sent a book. Have you guys heard of Maurice Nicole or Nicole?
No,
Can you, that's upside down or
no, it's okay.
No, it's good. It's
Oh,
good.
man,
and I started to
it's
read
like a
it.
penguin book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's big, but
Yeah.
Penguin anyway. And it says everything, absolutely, no, not absolutely, but lots of things have inner meanings and we need to delve into them. And I think about talking with Ron in his dementia, and that doesn't seem like there's an inner there. It's awful. You think about how you can lose yourself. Has anybody ever come out of it and talked about what it was like to be in there? That you guys know?
Good question, not I.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But pondering it is very painful.
Yes.
Anyway, did that. What else? Been taking. I have books upon books upon books upon books, and we're culling, Darla and I and my brother-in-law are culling through it, or them, and it's hard to let go of a good book. It's a good friend, but gotta get rid of them. There's just boxes of them, and I'm trying to figure out who to give some of these books to, or because they're so good, so precious, mostly theology and good.
Does your parish have a library?
That was my question too.
They've just started one. I was thinking, John, of maybe calling St. John Newman or St. Timothy's, where a good friend, priest, a Chinese friend, Father Ng Francis, has gone. Very wealthy parish. Do you know about that, Tom? St. Timothy's,
Timothy?
Laguna Niguel.
Yeah, I've heard of it. I don't really, obviously that's a wealthy area.
Yeah, very wealthy. He gave us a tour. He just got there a month ago. Wow, what a place. It's got.
How do you know, Ned? How do you know him?
Well, he came to our parish. We've got a weird parish, but he came to our. It's not weird.
Right in.
We've had a series of pastors that leave a lot to be desired, and Father Francis, this was wonderful, straightforward, great experienced man before he went into the seminary. He's a late vocation. He owned a couple of restaurants. He was in the Benedictines for a while. He was in Venezuela and learned very good Spanish. I mean, he's indistinguishable from, a native speaker. So he was in our parish, and he was a pastor at the time, was a 6'5" former firefighting guy. He never fought fires. He was an administrator, but he always talked about his firefighting days. He has this wingspan of, I don't know, 10, 12 feet, and he'd get up there in the middle of the sanctuary and preach, and he'd open his arms and all the girls would go, he's a good looking guy. But
At least he didn't have to worry about other people wearing his vestments.
yeah. But he was a bully. Francis had been with him in the seminary, and he, for whatever reason, he would wear his Benedictine stuff, and he had a cowl, the boogie.
Yeah.
And this pastor, or he was an administrator actually, would fill the cowl with stuff, and then he'd go to put it on and fall all over. He always made fun of him, and Francis always took it in good, measure. But he, anyway, he's a good guy, and I was thinking of sticking the books there. Do you guys have a lot of books? I'm sure you do.
Yeah, I do. I'm going to be working with the now hopefully retired archivist and bulletin editor at Our Lady of the Assumption, named Jean McKenna. And she's a voracious reader, and she's quite interested in spirituality and theology and history and liturgy and all that stuff. So she has some plans of organizing a good parish library at some point
I would love to give her all these books.
So if you can't find a good home otherwise, you could let me know, and I could alert her to that. And you
that
might
sounds
be able
great.
to click with her and see what might develop.
One of the
This
first
meeting is being recorded.
one of the first things that I did when I moved here was I had like 20 or 30 boxes of books of mostly theology, scripture, spirituality, and things like that, mostly religious subjects. I tried to, and at the time, the library wasn't taking any books, because libraries will take books, libraries. And in a bookstore, there was a bookstore that a local chain in this area, and they took a few, but not many. And then I called some priest friends to say, if you want to go through these things, I need to throw them out. I haven't read them. I always used to buy books, but I never read them, and unlike Frank, I didn't read the books that I bought. So, and I said, obviously, if I didn't use them in my pastoral ministry, I'm not going to be using them now. So, hello, Fred.
Fred.
Hi, Fred. Nice to see you. It's great to see you.
I eventually just threw them out. There was nowhere else to go.
Oh, geez, that's too bad.
Patrick Seminary didn't want them, and so I don't know. I just found that you could throw. I think you could throw paperback books out. I don't know what you could do with it, but some friend of mine said, "I'll take care of them," and he took them. But I let priests pick over them. But then there was nothing, and since then I really haven't felt the need for any of the books that I had. So. But you got to do it eventually, otherwise somebody's going to have to.
Yeah, we moved from a very large
Goodwill
home.
or St. Vincent de Paul, St. Vincent de Paul doesn't do that much anymore, but Goodwill or Salvation Army should still take them.
There are used bookstores too. I just didn't. I didn't know of any around here.
I remember. I'm trying to think. I think it was. I could be inventing some of the details here, but they're good details anyway. Remember Acres of Books in Long Beach? That's a huge, Fred, turn your other phone or your other computer instrument off. I think I think there may be some feedback because you actually are on two windows here. Fred,
That F isn't ferric. That's
I don't
Fred.
think
No, that-
Eric,
No, that's Fred
No, it's
Lawrence.
Fred.
Yeah,
No, they're both Fred. We're seeing double
Yeah.
of Fred.
one's Frederick and the other one is.
yeah,
Fred.
you need to turn the first one off.
I'm not sure what the first one is.
Or I
It
can,
was the
well,
one
I
you
can.
just-
Okay, I muted the first one, so we'll keep the F up there for good measure. Anyway, the story was, I used to go there periodically if I was ever in the Long Beach area and spend an hour or so browsing all of the used books there. And I recall on one of the shelves that had to do with philosophy and religion and all of that, there was a copy of Josephus Grett.
Wow.
Remember him?
Oh,
What a
God, yeah.
goon.
And somebody is feeding back.
I don't think it's me.
Hey, Fred, do you have a grandson or a granddaughter around that can fix this for you?
Fred's
Well, anyway, this copy of
Fred,
Josephus
Fred is
Grett's,
muted in both things, Tom.
Thomistic philosophy, I opened it and it had my name in it.
Oh my God.
Holy moly.
Oh, back. Oh my.
Wow.
But I didn't buy it.
Talk about a boomerang. My goodness.
I should have taken it to the clerk and said, double the price on this.
It's been blessed by my reading.
Rare book school.
You should have just thrown it away for all the good it did us. Josephus Grett.
Well,
What was that a book you guys read? What, in theology or
Yeah,
philosophy? When
Yeah,
philosophy.
book in Latin. There were some chapters in it that I thought were super. And
Philosophy? We had it for philosophy. Okay.
no,
yeah,
Gret.
John Berger. Learned
Yeah,
philosophy by memorizing Grett.
yeah, God help us. Often wonder what happened to him.
John Berger?
Yeah, do you know?
John Berger left the priesthood and got married and was living in Colorado Springs, I think. I don't know what I did, a wedding or I did a baptism when I was a young priest in Healdsburg, was my first parish assignment. And I met some guy who said, we were talking and I told him where I had gone. He said, well, do you know John Berger? I said, yes, he was our philosophy professor. I said, you know him? Yes. He said, I met him in AA. And because John apparently was an alcoholic.
Yeah, big time.
And he had that terrible accident. I think somebody was killed in the accident or something like
so.
that. I
Yeah.
remember. But he was so big on willpower. Remember how he was, at least in my experience of him, he was very big on willpower. And obviously,
Yes.
willpower is not, alcoholics only survive when they surrender and can't do it on their own. But he did.
Mhm.
This guy said, yes, I met him in AA and I was either the best man or the groomsman at his wedding. And I think he was living in some place in Colorado. I got the feeling is that it was in Colorado Springs. So.
I really liked Father Berger. I don't know what you guys thought. He was so, but he was so uptight.
Yes, he was.
I remember. You're so right. I mean, he thought he could overcome anything through willpower,
And memory.
And what?
And memory. He told me
Yes.
about, maybe he told us about these Spanish students who would I guess it was a theology book or I don't know what it was, and they would read it with a glue pot. And they would read the pages and then they would glue the pages together and never to never to be read again, and they would force them to memorize everything that they were reading.
Berger did this?
No, but he was telling me
Oh.
anyway
Holy
this
mackerel.
story about these people that he admired. Spanish, I think they were Spanish seminarians who this is how they studied.
Good grief.
But it seemed to me we learned philosophy mainly by memorizing syllogisms.
Did they sniff the glue?
I don't think so.
They may have, you know,
It might have. That might have been why.
yeah. Well, my dad had the exact opposite philosophy. His main thing was you don't have to know everything, but it helps to know where to find it.
Exactly.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's cool. Yes, that's great.
Yeah, like someone said that all you need to know in canon law is the number of the chancery office.
Really?
Especially in Los Angeles Archdiocese.
Dunkirk
Lou
8,
Del Castillo.
3801.
well, that's
8801.
the Chancery office? Oh, Tom. Oh, geez.
Dunkirk 8, 8801. And then that would get you Mary at the switchboard. Chancery office.
But we had a secretary.
I think
What's
Frank Weber, you know, I worked for Frank Weber summer after second theology. And I think a lot of those calls got referred right to him.
Could be.
We had a secretary named Maggie Cook. Her husband Irving was a deacon, and Maggie had this gravelly voice that somebody was really pissed off at, I don't know, the bishop. He called up and she says, I want to talk to that son of a bitch. And she said, which son of a bitch do you want to talk to, Father?
Take your pick.
Jeez, that was cool. Oh. Wow. Oh boy. Hmm.
But I
The only
think
thing I remember about,
Oh, Fred.
I
Fred,
don't know. I don't know.
We got to be able to hear you, really. I mean,
Yeah.
okay. Mute the other one.
What other?
Okay.
That one.
how do you do that? That's what I always ask my son. Hey, how do I do this? And he goes, ah. You know?
Okay. I'm
Okay, Fred. Try again, Fred.
Unmute.
There we go.
okay. Now
There
go
you
ahead.
You got it.
Now go ahead.
Now-
I just removed
What were you going to
that.
say?
With my almighty power, I removed that.
Amen.
All right, Fred.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Power.
Yeah.
And so,
What were you
Fred,
going to say, Fred? You remember?
why are you with us, Fred? Don't you have classes today?
No, I don't.
Oh,
Good. So what do you think of Charles Taylor?
I like him very much. He's very
Anybody read or
sensible,
listen to
very learned. He wears his learning lightly. And I think I have a prejudice towards Canadians. I like them.
let's see, Lonergan and Marshall McLuhan.
There you go.
Who else?
Charpentier,
Charpentier, of course.
Bob C. Yeah.
Who, Bob? Yeah. Who definitely is preferring the company of dogs to us today.
He sure loves Moby, doesn't he?
But who is this Charles?
Today,
Moby is Ferrickstock.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
Today's the
Bob's
feast of
was
Our
this-
Lady of Our Lady of Sorrows, which is, I was pastor there for 5 years.
Ah,
The only church so named in the Archdiocese of Boston.
But some others could have been named that, or
I don't know. So, you know, there are many multiple names, you know, but
yeah.
yeah. I preached today, and I said I have some problem figuring out which one to. The Blessed Mother has so many things. Is she the perpetual help, the untier of knots, the comfort of the afflicted, the Theotokos? I mean, you go on and on and on.
Right.
mhm.
It's a challenge.
Absolutely.
And until Paul VI said she was mother of the church, and the fathers of the Vatican Council put her in as the 8th chapter of the, rather than a separate document, the 8th chapter of the document on the church, which
Hmm.
placed her in a ecclesiological kind of background, which is
Right.
kind of nice. So. Anyway,
So Tim, what have you been doing? You've been asking everybody else.
Well,
What was
actually,
your week?
You've been taking your
actually,
beats.
the
Did you
weather.
fill the did you fill the bird feeder behind you?
Well, that's a hummingbird feeder. Yeah, the hummingbirds have not yet left for Mexico, and I mean, I don't know if you guys. I know you have hummingbirds in California, don't you, Ned,
Lots,
Tom, and
yeah.
John? Yeah,
We have a bunch.
yeah, we do too, and we have the same herd or group or flock of hummingbirds that come back year after year. It's the same guys. It's the same ones that come back.
Oh,
Now, don't ask me how I know that because I don't microchip them, but we know that they keep coming back because they know exactly where Sandra puts the feeders out. And so they are feasting like crazy, fattening themselves up for their flight. They go from here down to South Texas, and then they fly over the Gulf to someplace in Mexico. I don't know if they have to go through immigration or how they do that, but anyway.
They're
And so
bilingual.
I bet they are. I bet they are.
Well, do they shoot them in Texas, or do they trap them and ship them to California?
I think they take them up to Martha's Vineyard.
Okay.
we do have hummingbirds up here, and by the way, Tim,
I would think so. Yeah,
but they're not bilingual.
they're not.
I think
Yeah,
Tom's
they
a
just-
bias.
it's not with a Boston
They
accent.
just hum "God Save the Commonwealth of Massachusetts."
Well, I see that your former governor is not going to run again for re-election there, Frank. Yeah,
Oh, myth, yeah.
yeah. You know, turns out that some really good friends of ours, when we lived down in South Florida, she was Romney's wife's first cousin. Yeah, that's what it was. And so in the 2012, is that he ran in 2012. They were all supporting him, and they just presumed that we would too. And we said, no. We think. I actually thought he was kind of not a very deep thinker in terms of policy and things like that. But he's turned out to have a lot of cojones. He really has. I mean, I watched an interview this morning with someone who was sort of summarizing this book that he either has just come out with or came out or will come out with, where he was talking about or is talked about in this book, the second impeachment of Donald Trump after the insurrection on January 6th. Is Romney makes mention of the trial of Trump's trial in the U.S. Senate, and that he is saying that Mitch McConnell, after the testimony and all of the witnesses and all that, said they've nailed it. You know, they've really nailed it. You know, they've got, you know, I guess implication is they've got Trump and Trump's, and then no, and then they just blocked it. They didn't want to go any further with that.
Mhm.
And so I have a lot of admiration for him. And I remember back during Obama era when Obamacare was being discussed, is that Romney had put together when he was governor of Massachusetts a very extensive Obamacare type of medical program for Massachusetts,
Mhm.
which what I read or thought about from a distance was it was very good, a very good state healthcare system. And so I have a lot of admiration for him. Plus, he's Mormon, and truthfully have not met a Mormon that I didn't admire greatly. Yeah.
Well, he gets mixed
agree.
reviews in Massachusetts because he did a lot of good things, but when he ran for president, like that healthcare thing, he disowned it. And so there have been instances in his life where he's set aside the truth or the reality for expediency. But in the long run, I think you're right that he has, maybe we get old so we can, speak truth to power in a way. And I think he's done that, in the Senate. He's the only senator in the history of the United States who's voted against the president of his own party in an impeachment trial.
Wow.
And so, I think he has a reasonably good. I think he's basically an honorable man. I think he gave into political pressures, all that kind of thing. But he first ran here against Ted Kennedy for the Senate.
I didn't know that.
He got wiped out, but yeah, he ran against Kennedy for the Senate. So. And he was Kennedy geared up for that race like Kennedy was a preparer, so but he geared up for that one like he never geared up for any other one because he thought it was a real threat, but he blew him away in the election. So
Massachusetts politics is
but
always
McConnell will pay in history for what you talked about, because had he acted according to what he knew to be the truth and the reality, we'd have been rid of Trump.
That's right. Absolutely, we would have been rid of Trump. Yeah, and I mean McConnell. I mean he's from Kentucky, which is a neighboring state. I mean it's not right next to us, but it's in our sphere of news and influence and all of that. And he's got to go down as one of the major hypocrites of my lifetime. I mean he blocked Merrick Garland. When the last year of Obama's administration, he nominated Merrick Garland for the Supreme Court, but McConnell said no president will ever be able to get a Supreme Court nominee in the last year of his term. Well, then guess what? Donald Trump loses the election in 2020, and he nominates that girl from Notre Dame. What's her name?
Amy Coney Barrett.
Coney Barrett. This is after Trump has lost the election.
Yeah. And
McConnell pushes it through the Senate. So, hypocrisy has no limitation, I think, in Congress anymore. Anyway.
Go ahead, Tim.
So it's been a gorgeous, gorgeous week, just beautiful week. And one of the highlights of my week is on Thursdays, I go and take communion to a couple of women who are, one is in a rehab center and the other had been in one, and she's at home now. And I just enjoy sitting with these women and just talking and bringing the Eucharist to them. The one is a difficult situation because she's in a room at the rehab center with another woman who not Catholic. And so like Nancy is in her chair next to her bed, and then May is in her wheelchair 2 or 3 feet away. And so it's kind of an awkward situation to be doing the prayers before the Eucharist, before you give the Eucharist. And so I say to her, what would you like to say? And so she says, we'll do the Our Father, Hail Mary, and Glory be. And then we do the Lamb of God, and I give her communion. And she does it. She wants to kind of keep it low key, which I can understand. But the woman who I go to her home, she wants the full deal. It's not like a mini mass, but it's about 10 minutes of prayers, and it's wonderful. And so it's really neat, and that's why I envy you priests. It's just, it had to have been just a beautiful thing. And I mean this had to have been just has to be a beautiful thing to be able to consecrate the bread and the wine, and then to give it to people who absolutely are starving for the Eucharist. And so I just love doing it. It's fun. Maybe it's not supposed to be fun, but it is fun to do. It is fun. So that's kind of my week.
Jim, that's why I've always I believe strongly in the idea that everybody has a ministry, and the priest doesn't have all the gifts, but the parish has all the gifts with all the people that are there. And that I always felt that with Eucharistic ministers to the sick. I mean, they gave people the time that I could never give them.
Yeah.
And they were like
you
angels.
put that, Gary.
I'm
I
sorry?
like you put that. The parish has all the ministries.
He has all the gifts.
All the gifts, yeah.
The priest does not have all the gifts. He has certain ones, but he doesn't have all the gifts that are required for ministry. But
The sacraments are given to the church.
Yep. Yeah.
And then next week I may not be on this call. We're gonna go camping for 4 or 5 days. We belong in North Carolina. There's a very active Airstream club, and I think we've got maybe 250 trailers, which is about 450 human beings that belong to our Carolina Airstream club. But we're having a joint rally with 2 North Carolina Airstream clubs at a campground that's only about an hour from us here. So we're going to go to that, and we're looking forward to it because we'll see a lot of people we only see 5 or 6 times a year at these rallies. So
You see Tommy Ty? Tommy Ty? No.
But he does that Oregon Trail caravan.
Okay, because I remember seeing his name on the Oregon Trail.
And how did you know him?
He was a kid in St. Elizabeth's Parish in Van Nuys. I don't know, 2, 3, 4 years, maybe 4 years younger than me. I remember training him as an altar boy, and then he went to Queen of Angels.
Oh.
And he was at, I don't think our paths crossed at Queen of Angels. But I don't really remember. But I remember, he was a real nice kid. But he was part of the seminary community after us, and like I say, I knew him at St. Elizabeth's in Van Nuys.
I wonder where he lives now.
You could probably look it up better than I could on
I can.
On your
I can. Yeah, I can do that.
Network.
Yeah.
T-I-G-H-E.
G-H-E.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
T-I-G-H-E. And you might identify yourself as having gone to Queen of Angels, and
I will do that.
And you know Tom Welbers, who he probably should remember.
You hope he does.
Well,
I'm sure.
He
will.
I was that SOB that taught him how to serve properly.
Now, was that still in the Latin days where you had to teach him?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
1950s.
Deum quite laetificat juventutem meam.
That's it.
I remember, well, I don't know what grade you are or we were when we could be altar boys, but it'd be like, what do you think, Johnny? How old were we when we'd be an altar boy? Like fourth grade, fifth grade, younger?
Like 6, 7, 8 years
Yeah.
old, something like
St.
that.
Elizabeth's, it was fifth grade.
Fifth grade. Okay.
I think they would start to recruit them at the end of fourth grade, but you couldn't really serve until you were in fifth grade. That's a recollection I've got. I don't know
I
what
have
I had for breakfast this morning, but I can remember that back in grade school.
That's the sad thing, Tom. Yeah, like yeah, I can remember whatever year it was in grade school at St. Athanasius in Long Beach, is my dad taught me how to be an altar boy. And I don't think he had ever been an altar boy, but he would work with me on my Latin, and so we made a little mock altar, in the living room, and he'd say, okay, Tim, we come in, you're gonna say this prayer, you're gonna bow down, and all that. And so by the time that our assistant pastor started doing the training, I had the Latin down. I had it really done very well. And I had not thought of that in 70 years. Yeah, probably 70 years ago, Johnny, and that's when we became altar boys. God,
Way back.
amazing.
Yep.
I could never wrap my tongue around the Suscipiat.
Well, you heard the story about the priest who didn't really speak all that clearly. And he started off in the name of the Father, it said, nomine Patris. And then he said, intro ibo altare Dei, and the altar boy responds, Deum qui laetificat, and then he says the next, qui tuus Deus, whatever. And finally the priest turns around and says to the altar boy, I said, light the candles.
It's a keeper. Oh, good.
He knew how to say that in Latin.
I don't know, Fred.
Just garbled it.
Illumina.
Those are stories that are gone forever.
Yeah, really.
They are. They truly are. And so I was watching a video of Bishop Joseph Strickland from Tyler, Texas, that he had posted up on, well, it was on YouTube, and I think he posted it within the last week. And it resembled an homage to his glory, his own personal glory. I mean, you had these scenes where he was on a kneeler, and he was talking about the synod, Johnny's favorite, talking about the synod that's coming up, and how he said people can call me a schismatic, but he said it's the church that is moving away from me, and he's got all of these shots. The camera shot would for example be in front of him, and he's got his hands in prayer on his prie-dieu, with the cross and the candle. And I thought, my God, it's kind of like his own canonization.
Yeah.
But he kept talking in these ambiguous, vague terms about the heretics in the church, and he never said, well, he never said what the heresies were in his opinion. He kind of alluded to, same-sex marriage. I guess there are a couple of topics that are coming up in the Synod. I don't know what the topic, that he felt the church may take a wrong direction in what it's going to do. And I don't know if same-sex civil unions will be a topic, or however, he did mention specifically giving communion to people who by their actions were in a state of mortal sin. So I figure he's probably talking about Biden, right?
Among
But
others.
yeah.
You
What
know,
is it with
I
these
am-
guys? They really savor their power, or you know that they have or think they have. What's the cardinal?
Raymond
Burke.
Burke.
Burke,
You know, George Crook at one point sent to many people, I don't know, 12, 15 pictures of Cardinal Burke in his regalia.
Yeah.
Just and a couple of them, he had this long train.
the Capamania, they call it, the Great Cape.
Have you seen those things? And gloves and just the whole thing. And he seemed to be just in glory, you know. Ah, my God.
Someone sent out a picture one time. It showed Carol Channing and Raymond Burke, and its title was "Twins Separated at Birth." I spent the last couple of days with Bob Evans. This is a priest who's a Providence. He was a retired auxiliary bishop. He's a classmate of Raymond Burke, and I told him, I said, I'm absolutely scandalized that Raymond Burke, what he's doing, when he wrote a foreword to this little treatise written by two Latin American guys who have been anti-Vatican II for years and anti this and anti that, and they put together this book called something about that the Second Vatican, that the Synod will, what is it? It's going to. It's all against the Synod anyway, and they sent it to every priest and every bishop in the United States, at least that much anyway. And I said, how can, and Bob just laughed. I don't know what else. He didn't come back at me or anything. He just laughed. He says, Raymond, he just laughs at him. And I don't know. We didn't get into a conversation about it because it's pointless. You know, these guys have been against the I agree, Tim. I think Strickland is in schism. I just think we just need to recognize it's a schism. It's unofficial, but it is a schism. Strickland doesn't know. My friend Bill Justice, who's an auxiliary in San Francisco, does not like him as a person. He says, I think he's a Baptist minister who somehow became ordained a bishop, a Roman Catholic bishop. But he was talking about Francis eroding the positive faith.
Right.
That's what it was. Yeah.
You know, LifeSite put together a number of subjects,
yes,
or themes that were going to be, at least according to LifeSite, considered at the Synod. The first one that I read was women deacons, how horrible that was going to be to bring up and talk about, and married priests, how horrible that was to be, you know, and just stuff like that.
Well, Strickland, you know, has had an apostolic visitation.
Yes.
By two bishops, Cacanus of Phoenix and I forget the Bishop of Camden, who was president of the CU. I forget what his name is. And there have been stories that indicate that this has been discussed, and that in addition to the doctrinal kind of issues that get raised around him, there are also issues about the management of his diocese. And so it appears that they're getting close to asking for his resignation.
Okay, in the Wikipedia article, and so I looked the guy, and in Wikipedia, it makes mention of these two visitations, Frank, and that one, and it said the last one will probably result in the recommendation that he resign. And I don't know if it was for financial irregularities or mismanagement. I don't know.
Tim, he is called a buffoon. He called Francis a buffoon publicly. I mean, how do you put up with that kind of crap?
Huh.
Well, there's a cadre of them, you know. Vigano, the auxiliary bishop of Kazakhstan, Astana in Kazakhstan, you know, there are these guys who use these platforms as if it were that you would expect major pronouncements about the Catholic faith to come from the Bishop of Tyler, Texas. Where the hell is Tyler, Texas? Or the
Somewhere near
auxiliary bishop of
Kazakhstan.
Astana, Kazakhstan. You know, it isn't as if they're saying, you know, they're Alexandria or Milan or, you know, that kind of thing. And so, you know, but they get all this attention. And so that it's Burke, Schneider from Kazakhstan, Strickland, and Vigano. There's kind of a quartet of them with Muller, the cardinal, who was the head of Doctrine and Faith, when they said no to me 3 times. So I'm not completely unbiased about good Cardinal Muller. Playing in and out a little bit, you know, not fully in, but absolutely certainly not fully out either. So this is what's going there. They're in the press all the time.
Well, they're in the press all the time. I still suspect that there is one member of that unholy fraternity that consciously avoids the press in this area. And I think that's Steve Bannon.
Mhm.
Because I think he is of the same mind about the reform of the church back to
Mhm.
the way it is in conformity to his own political leanings.
That's right. And he's been known to be in alliance with Burke, especially in setting up that
And Vigano.
institute in Italy in an abandoned monastery.
That's the reason why I can't help but think he is part of that whole
Yeah.
conspiracy.
Fred, I'm curious, because you tell us that you listen and get a lot of discussion with your students. Does this topic come up?
Which topic?
Of the jillions that we've been talking about.
The resistance to Pope Francis?
Oh, no, it
No.
doesn't at all.
Inside,
couldn't
that's
care
inside
less about
baseball, yeah.
Ecclesiastical shenanigans.
Yeah.
Got it.
Well, I don't think that there are many Catholics who probably give a shit about,
Right.
you know, this kind of, you know, we do because we care deeply and it's our age to kind of be concerned about things like this. But I think it's, I mean, a society, American society that can tolerate Donald Trump, I mean, you know, and why can't you then tolerate bishops like Strickland and other guys like that? I mean, it's just, you know, it's kind of just part of our culture these days.
American
Sadly.
Yeah, they're not connected.
No.
Yeah, they are connected. And I think as someone, I think the bishops are as divided as the country is, and in just the same way. You know, it's what characterizes our age now. I'm sorry Ned left. Ned put us on to this guy named Andrew Sullivan. I don't know if any of you subscribe to him. He's a conservative, a gay man who's conservative and writes, and he would be Republican, but this morning I just happened to was reading through it. It's an indictment of the Republic. I mean, it's a scathing indictment of the Republican Party. And you mentioned Mitch McConnell, you know, that the Republican, Mitt Romney apparently is retiring. And and he said in either a book or he quotes someone, he says that Mitt Romney has said, most of my party does not believe in the Constitution.
Oh.
And he said some senator told him when he was settling in the Senate that the first criterion he has when it comes to voting any kind of legislation is, will this get me reelected? That's the priority, and he's characterizing most of the Republican Party that way. That they're interested in now is getting is not letting the Democrats get into power, and they have no other agenda other than that. So, and Trump and McConnell they're cut from the same mold, I guess, in different ways.
Yeah.
You know, I think there's a larger movement in the United States. They are the tip of the spear, if you will, of a drift to the right in the church. I don't know if any of you have read Bishop Barron's million. He sold 1 million copies of this book
Yeah,
called
I
This
know.
Is My Body. And he basically claims in the beginning that it was he who got the bishops going on the Eucharistic renewal and Eucharistic revival. And frankly, I read this and I'm shocked. I think it's a textbook reiteration, a good textbook reiteration of pre-Vatican II Eucharistic theology. And
Which concentrates only on real presence, nothing else.
Yeah, exactly. And it's so densely packed that it has no catechetical value.
Right.
I mean, he's the great catechist. Listen to this line. In Aquinas' more precise language, when one consumes the Eucharist, one crunches the accidents of the bread with the teeth, not the body of Christ. Since Christ is being received substantially, but according to his sacramental species, not his proper species. Now, what catechetical audience would that be directed at? I mean, it's incredible. And now he's moving to sell 2 million of these. I read it because a colleague of mine said he was buying one for everybody in his parish.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, it's useless. It's not only useless because it stops the pre-Vatican II, but it's useless because it's not a catechetical document. And this is the guy who's, convincing the United States bishops about things they ought to do. So there's this whole drift in the church that's very uncomfortable, I think, to the right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so clarify for me, do you think that, tell me why you think that's a drift to the right? Is it because you see him going back to pre-Vatican kinds of concepts? Is that?
Yeah, there's nothing in there. There's nothing in there that indicates to me that he's read anything, and I'm sure he has, because he's a very bright man. He's made a conscious decision to contain Eucharistic theology within a pre-Vatican II mode. The church. For example, Vatican II talks about the church.
Let me unpack that just a little bit, because the point to my mind seems to be he is keeping it into an individualistic Jesus and me context. In other words, Jesus comes to us in the Eucharist for my benefit rather than for building up the church as his body.
Right.
Yeah, the relationship of the Eucharist, Jesus' presence in the Eucharist, he just keeps emphasizing the reality of the presence, but he does very, very little to talk about the context of the presence in terms of our identity as members of the body of Christ.
Right.
And Vatican II was very clear about saying that there are 4 dimensions to the real presence of Christ in the sacramental action. And the first of those is the presence of Christ in his body as they gather to celebrate. So Jesus Christ is already there when we come together to celebrate. He's not that we are this flock of sheep waiting for the transubstantiation to happen so that we can get get nourished by him as individuals, but that we're already there. We already have to reverence his presence in one another as we gather for the Eucharistic community. Then he is present in his word, and he is present in ministry, particularly the ministry of the presider. And then lastly, kind of pulling all of this together, he's present in the consecrated elements. He doesn't mention that fourfold presence at all.
No.
Well,
he doesn't
that
mention,
damn book.
like as I was going to say, he doesn't mention the community of the people. I mean, there's a place in the document on the liturgy that comes very close to saying that the community can celebrate with the priest. It doesn't say it, but it comes real close.
Yeah.
And he's focused on this thing from Flannery O'Connor. Fred, you'll be interested in this. If it's a symbol, to hell with it.
Right.
Yeah.
So he makes a big difference, but there's no effort on his part to say, to parse or to understand the much more complicated understanding of the meaning of symbol, other than what Flannery O'Connor had.
And Ratzinger, in his document on the Eucharist as Pope, took as a theme the summit and source of the church's life and mission. And Ratzinger unpacked that, unfolded that. But
Right.
that has no mention as much
It doesn't. No, you're right,
as
Tom.
Darren loves paparazzi.
Mhm.
He makes absolutely no attempt to integrate the real presence in the Eucharist as summit and source of church's life and mission.
You're
We
absolutely
talk
right.
about
He never
our
mentions
life
that.
and mission as individuals, but he doesn't say, he misses the ecclesial.
Right.
Yeah,
Totally.
Thomas Aquinas said that the res, or the grace of this sacrament, is the unity of the mystical body of Christ.
Yeah, he misses Thomas Aquinas there too.
Well, he quotes him in some ways, but
Well, as much as he burns, he quotes him selectively,
yeah.
as of course everybody does. Cafeteria Catholics and all that, but it's it's very disappointing, because I have a lot of admiration for Barron too, but
Well, I think he's
Yeah.
very talented,
yeah,
bright man. Yeah.
and
I think he's cast his lot.
he has cast, yeah,
But he's also smug.
Yeah.
oh yeah,
Well,
Thirds-
we listen to his Sunday homilies, because his Word on Fire has got a phenomenal media operation going, and it would be tough to be in a parish church when you look around and see who your fellow parishioners are, and that he would be preaching his homily, and that most of it would not just go way over the head of 95% of the people that are there. I mean, he is bright. He's very articulate. I mean, my gosh, and he, but I don't know who he thinks his audience is. I mean, that's the thing that I wonder. Is it other theologians, or I don't know? But we faithfully listen to him, because he always has an interesting take on the scriptures of the day. That's the thing I enjoy, So, anyways, he is gifted.
Yeah. No doubt.
I suspect an awful lot of Catholics prefer the homilies that they can't understand to the ones that they do. I can always, sometimes I actually did, somebody would come up and tell me how much they loved my homily. And I would ask them, well, what did I say? And usually it was what they understood me saying, which was what they were thinking already, rather than what I actually said.
But you know what, Tom? You know, I went to a homiletic workshop as clergy education director that was sponsored by this No Circ organization, and they had a guy named Fred Balmer. He was a precious blood priest, and he gave this workshop. It was a week-long workshop, and there were like 5 priests with me, and we were supposed to go and replicate that workshop in our diocese, which we never could do. It also turned out that that was the last thing he did before he left the priesthood and got married. But he was kind of a drama person. I mean, he is interested in theater and things like that. And he talked about, and what I most remember, he talked about 2 forms of communication. One was he called transmissional communication, and the other was transactional communication. And the transmissional, of course, would just simply be, I have a body of knowledge and I want to give you this body of knowledge, something like a sermon would be. But a transactional form of communication is you as a priest, you are interacting with the scriptures, and that's coming out of your own spirit, your own life, your own whatever is going on within you. And that is enacting in someone else how they are interacting with those scriptures. So you might get 5 different people who loved your homily, and there'd be 5 different things that none of which you said.
Yeah.
But I think that, to me, now, Fred, did Thomas Aquinas say something about that? The Spirit speaks to the Spirit, or cor ad cor loquitur? I don't know who said all that.
That was Newman.
Newman?
Newman's,
Oh,
yeah, Newman's motto. The
You know,
seal.
And what does that mean in English? I don't know
Heart
the Latin.
speaks to heart.
Heart speaks to heart.
Okay.
So a homily, that's why there has to be, in some way, some personal, not that you're talking about yourself, but some personal way that you express yourself that allows them to kind of catch on to whatever it is they need to hear for themselves in that particular day.
But my point is, and my complaint was that they would take because I tried to be
and use it the way they want. Yeah.
I tried very hard to say, speak from, this is what's happening to me. This is the way that this works, is speaking in my life. And they were basically saying, well, you didn't talk about abortion.
Oh.
Or
Yeah,
or the other thing that they would say is, that's exactly what my husband needs to hear.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But
I think it's got to be hard for you guys, to stand in front of hundreds and hundreds of people where there's not an opportunity for questions. Like at the end of a homily, say, anyone have any questions about what I just talked about? Because in college seminars, and I used to speak to large groups of people, you could always say, okay, question time. It's got to be kind of hard to lay it out there and wonder, well, did it bomb? Did it go over, without people, I guess, at the end of Mass, like you're saying, Thomas said, oh, great homily, Father. I really enjoyed it, when you were not trying to make it enjoyable. But it's got to be hard for you guys Sunday after Sunday to give a homily with no feedback. Or do you have a sense of feedback from the pulpit? Do you sense things when you're giving a homily?
Sure.
You can a little bit, but we had a program that we used to do in our parish. We did it a couple of weeks during the summer, where we had a feedback session after Mass. And in recent years, they've kind of moved it to the front where the homily is shared with a group of people before, and you get some feedback on it then. So,
Really?
yeah, there are mechanisms you can put into place, you know, to do that. I mean, and there are also sometimes people who come to you and say, you know, Father, I really like that point that you made, or your homily spoke to me today because this is
Yeah.
my situation.
Right. Yeah.
The vast majority of people are being polite, but you will on occasion run into someone who who's really heard what you've said. And you know, what is it? The numbers are 30, maybe if you're lucky, 30% of the people will really hear what you said, something like that.
Yeah, you don't always get that kind of feedback, Tim, although I've told you about this parish in Marin County, which is a tremendous experience liturgically. It is to me exactly what the Second Vatican Council was envisioning. And these are really, it's a tremendous community. And when you preach, you just feel a connection with them. I mean, you can see it in the way they are listening to what you're having to say and nodding or whatever they're doing, you know. But that's not always the case.
Is that a well-educated community?
I would think they are.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I would think that might be a bit of a factor.
And
Maybe
then-
I'm wrong on that.
And a lot of them went through Cursillo. So
Okay.
there's an aliveness to them in the way they respond and the way they sing. It's just, but it's kind of an intentional community in a way, you know. So
Doesn't Cursillo focus on whatever the liturgy and the homily has? There's a call to action that comes out of it, Tim?
Not so much. No, that may be an experience other Cursillistas have, but not in the community I belong to. We don't talk about that. The Cursillo thing is a 3 elements. One is in your reunions, your weekly reunions, you talk about your piety of the week. You know, I mean, how did your prayer life go during the week? And then how did your prayer life lead you to any understandings, which we call study? You know, like, did you read something that provoked something? And then the action is, how are you going to put your piety and your study into action in the next week? And so we all have to go around and say, this is what I'm going to try and do. You know, this. And so I don't know that it's, Johnny, if it's based specifically on like relating to the Sunday readings. Not specifically. Not specifically. And in my group, most guys, we do the scripture readings every day on our own. And so, someone will say, yeah, did you understand the gospel for yesterday? Or the one yesterday just threw me, which was, the people were bitching at Moses. They're wandering in the desert and they're all getting bitten by snakes, And so I guess Moses then makes this staff and he puts a seraph image of a snake on it. And I thought, well, why would, isn't that kind of like worshiping a false idol? But then that was a superficial reaction. So there are things that I read every day where I say, what in the world were they trying to communicate? I mean, but yeah. So we talked about that last night at grouping. Is what was the purpose of the snake on the pole? But enough of that.
Well, that was part of the Feast of the Holy Cross, and Jesus quotes that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that I've always thought, to me, it's an amazing thing that an instrument of torture and death becomes an instrument of life.
Yeah.
And that's what the cross is.
And I think whatever that may have meant, on that occasion with Moses, which may have been very, very puzzling, because God seems to be commanding something like making an image, idol worship, but that really got its meaning only in its fulfillment in Christ.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. But those Israelites wouldn't have known that, would they?
No.
No.
No, all they wanted was, okay, we got healed. We looked at,
Yeah.
he looked at this and God healed us.
And we got a better diet. You know, we got a much better diet out of the deal. So,
Well, yeah.
so do we know where where did Ned go?
He didn't tell us.
Did he say,
No.
didn't he say that he and his wife were going to visit the grandchildren or something?
I think
Early on in the
Yeah.
meeting?
Yeah. But he would have at least said goodbye.
I just assumed that the camera was on and he planned to come back.
Johnny, I'm looking at you and you resemble, I was watching a program on the worst presidents America has ever had, you know, and, you know, Franklin Pierce turns out to be the worst guy who don't, and the way you look with your goatee being so long, you look like one of those former presidents, a little bit look like that. I'm racking my brain trying to figure out which one you look like. But
Well, thank you for that feedback because I'm due for a haircut and a beard trim, and I'll pass that along.
okay.
For some time, I can't remember which part of the seminary, whether it was in LA or Rome. Someone gave me a copy of Ripley's Believe It or Not, a takeoff on that. And the thing they were pointing to in terms of me was this statement that said, Zane Sturdley speaks 17 different languages. And then underneath it said, unfortunately, none of them can be understood by anyone.
Oh,
I think that was Mad Magazine, didn't they?
Yeah, I guess it was. Yeah.
I liked your comment that Charlie Barr said.
Oh,
That
yeah.
confidence is that feeling you have just before you really understand the situation.
Yeah.
That
Just
was-
before, yeah, just before. You know, my memory of Charlie Barr is only as a high school student, and I remember. I don't know that I was the first one in line, or was Jerry Ingres. Yeah, I guess maybe I was always. And I can remember him when he was teaching his driver education. You know, and so you remember they had that little podium in the corner of the classroom, and they had a table that the priest sat behind. You know.
Mhm.
And he was, and my memory of him is he must have been a heavy smoker, because his cassock just stunk to high heaven, and I could smell it being so close. Anyways, and I thought, and I always wondered, do these guys never get their cassocks clean, or do they just say, who gives it, who cares, you know? But I remember, because I could see his feet, and I don't know if it was Gatlin or someone said, well, how do you know? And he always, and he drive an old piece of shit car, you know, like an old Chevy stick shift, you know, that he must have gotten at the junkyard or something like that. And so he was telling us how smoothly you're supposed to go off from a stopped position. And he said, I want you to think that you have an egg under your right foot, and that when you are going to pull away from a stop sign or start out, you don't want to break the egg. You want to do things so very, 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 very softly. And some of the other kinds of things he said, I know he had us memorize how many feet per second would you travel going at a certain miles per hour, you know? So like 60 miles an hour, you're doing 90 feet per second. These are little things that just, I don't know why they stick with me, but he was such a, yeah. But you guys had him a number of times, didn't you, in major seminary, didn't you?
well, I had the blessing of his language lab at the major seminary, which I thought was brilliant. And I may have told you the story when we finished second year of college, and we chose English or Spanish, right? And BJ McCoy called me in because I had chosen English. And he said, "You're going to take Spanish. Father Barr wants you." And it turned out that this language lab was just a big blessing to me because how many of you know what he created? That he was up at that front corner, Tim, that you're talking about, but at a certain point in the class period, we'd raise our tabletop and there was a reel-to-reel and a set of headphones, and he would have us listen and repeat, and he'd tune in and coach us. It was just a brilliant 2 years that I got with him.
Oh,
Well, we didn't have that in Queen of Angels.
No,
I
no,
didn't. I don't even know if we had. Did we have the desktops that even raised up? I don't remember that.
oh,
Yeah,
no,
we had that.
I don't think
Yeah.
so. He created that. And Tom, hasn't the college been destroyed now?
Yeah, it's a housing tract now.
Yeah.
What? You're kidding. So is there no seminary there any longer?
No more college seminary.
So what is there, Tom?
A housing tract.
No. So where do young men go to
Oh,
finish
they
up
they have
their-
a couple of I guess you would call them sort of like houses of study. That
That
are
are pre major seminary.
major seminary where college students will live and then go to another college. There's
Oh,
one, I
okay.
think, in Gardena. I forget the name of it, but I think a lot of those students will go to Dominguez Hills, Cal State Dominguez Hills, and then get formation stuff at the house. But it's maybe 15 or 20 guys living there together. I'm not that well acquainted with that structure. I've never really been.
We have that in Boston, that most of our seminary, pre-seminary who are in that position go to Our Lady of Providence Seminary in Providence, Rhode Island, which is affiliated with Providence College, which is run by the Dominicans. So they take their courses there and graduate from there, and then they come to Boston to start seminary.
Frank, if you don't mind, what did they ask of you when you returned to ministry? You went to some of those steps, did you not?
Well, yeah, kind of. First, they said to me, did I want just permission to say mass? Well, apparently they give you a letter says you could say mass, but only in private. And I said, no, I don't want that. So they said, well, what you want? I said, I want to go back to ministry. They said, what are you willing to do for it? I said, what do you mean? He said, would you go to the seminary? And I said, yeah. So there's a seminary in Boston that's national, even has international students, that Cardinal Cushing founded, which is for older men in second careers. Like when I was there, the average age was 48, whereas 20 minutes down the road is the regular seminary for the 20, 30 somethings. And so they asked me to do an academic year there. I didn't have to take exams, but I did all the class stuff and the readings. I did a paper and something I was interested in, anti-Catholicism in America, especially in Boston. And then at the end of the year, they just waited for Rome to respond, because I finished the academic year in May and I didn't hear back. It was completely possible that Rome would have said no, even at that point. I didn't hear back until November.
Well, they did say no at one point, didn't they, Frank?
What?
They did say no at one point, and then
Yeah, Rome said
Cardinal-
no 3 times, but
Holy,
O'Malley wouldn't give up.
yeah.
And he kept going back. And there was a German priest who I think later was sent home to Germany because he had some kind of a problem, who was kind of sympathetic, but Muller and Ladaria were the top guys, and he didn't think he could get it by them at all.
Wow.
And so,
O'Malley
Frank-
wouldn't.
And so was there anybody else like you who had been a priest and then got married and then came back, or was it just older men who wanted to pursue the priesthood?
In the seminary, it was older men who wanted to pursue the priesthood, some of whom were widowers.
Okay.
But
Okay.
and when I came back, to the best of my knowledge, there were only 3 cases like mine in the United States. And so, and some of those younger men who did that, they went to the Congregation for Clergy. But at the time I was laicized, it was done by Doctrine and Faith, and the protocol is I had to go back there. And they kept saying no. Whereas clergy would have said yes. So O'Malley got totally frustrated after they said no 3 times. He was persistent enough. Like Bob's bishop, they said no, that was it. But Bob's bishop, unfortunately, didn't have access to the Pope. So O'Malley talked to the Pope about it, told him the story, and the Pope said, take the file from Doctrine and Faith, take it over to clergy and tell them I told you to do it.
Does he have that kind of authority?
I'd say so.
I always say it was because my saintly mother had the foresight in 1942 to name me Francis.
Francis, exactly. By the way,
That could,
Frank, I forgot
Oh,
to
my
mention,
goodness.
I had on last Saturday, we went, this priest Jim Houston, Harry Gregg and I went to Boston. There was a Franciscan priest there named Simeon Gallagher that we've all known for a number of years. He was helping the pastor out, Kevin O'Leary, the pastor of the
The cathedral, Monsignor O'Leary, yeah.
And we were going to go out to lunch, and we arrived, and Simeon said, we're having lunch in the dining room. And who did I sit right next to but your bishop,
The Cardinal?
Valley.
Yeah.
And I mentioned you, and of course, he knows you. And
Yeah. So if I can just follow up a little bit on Gary's visit to Boston, at the end of our dinner in the North End in the Italian, we had a very nice dinner, and of course you get more food than you need. So they asked about a doggy bag.
Yeah.
And I was the only one who could take a doggy bag. I wasn't enthusiastic about it because I can't cook. I can freeze it, but refrigerate it. So anyway, they prevailed on me. We put all of our stuff in the doggy bag and walked out with this white bag. So we got out and we were waiting for the Uber. And he looked homeless. Big man came by and said, hey, you guys got anything or something like that? I said, what do you mean? He said, oh, anything. And I said, are you hungry? And he said, yeah. I said, here. So I said, there's enough food in you even to feed a big guy like that. So it gave me a whole new idea about doggy bags, especially if I'm in a heavily trafficked urban neighborhood.
you
Take it and go find someone who can eat it.
Yeah.
The other thing is that last night we had a gala here. It's called the Celebration of the Priesthood. It was actually quite nice. I used to avoid going because I thought it'd be terribly clerical and all that kind of stuff, but it wasn't bad. And it's a fundraiser for the fund that runs the healthcare and this place where I'm living for priests. And we had 12. The Cardinal kind of gave a swan song because he's in his private conversations, he's talking about the new man. This is last year. He's been bishop for 20 years. And but there was 1,200 people there, and they raised $1.65 million. So it was quite an interesting event. Yeah.
Wow.
And they had a video of 3 priests, one in a city parish, and what he did to bring kids together and create kind of a sense of community among mainly Hispanic people. one who's here, the priest is here. He's a chaplain of a high school, and how he got that high school through the father of a family shot his wife and his son and killed them both. And the boy went to that high school. And then one in my home parish in Duxbury, Massachusetts, where a postpartum woman strangled her 3 children. And the role that the parish priest, the pastor, played in that and is still playing in it. It was really effective. It was very, very well done, and kind of very effective sign of rather, how the priesthood affects people's lives in a deeper way than simply, sprinkling holy water on it.
Yeah, those were not easy things to put together in a manner that you're described. My gosh, wow, those are
Going back
powerful
to
stories.
St.
Frank.
John's Seminary College, I looked it up on Google Maps, and I'd like to share the screen. Here it is.
There's St. John's Seminary.
Yeah, there's St. John's Seminary. You've got the 3 dorms. You've got the library. I don't know if you can see my pointer or not.
Yes.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
can. Yeah, we
Okay,
can.
the library's there. This is all a housing development, and Seminary Road goes up the hill to St. John Seminary Philosophy Library.
Oh,
So the philosophy library is still there, but this is all housing development where the dorms and the chapel would have been here, and the classrooms here, and the prayer hall here, and here would be the dorms and the administration building right in here.
Hey,
And
Tom,
this is
Tom,
all,
to the lower left, not the lower corner left. Is that a golf course right there?
This-
To the right, to the right of your cursor, to the right in that area there. It looks like no.
I think those are still orange trees.
It's orange groves.
Oh,
I
okay.
think we still have orange groves here and possibly up here.
There, yeah. And is that a river? A river
Yeah.
to the left?
That
Yeah,
creek-
Cayega Creek.
Yeah.
Now, so
Okay.
is that the 101 on the far left, Tom?
No, that would be what used to be
Thomas Road.
Thomas Road. I'm not sure exactly what it
Okay.
is now. Yeah, it's still
Okay.
Thomas Road.
Okay. Oh, Somas, yeah.
Yeah.
We used to send our dog to Somas.
And so I'm sure that they saw that area for the housing development looks like, doesn't Google tell you when it was taken, when the photo was taken? Somewhere.
It may, but I haven't yet
Okay. Yeah.
become familiar with that part of it.
I bet they got a lot of money for that tract of land that they sold.
they did.
Wow.
you bet.
Yeah.
The views from there would have been great, or must be great.
Well, I'm thinking if I ever do get up there again, which I don't know if I will or not, or I don't have a great desire to. But these houses look like they're being built. I think they're probably
Yeah.
built now. But there would be a little dead end here.
It looks like
They
it.
have a view right down to the seminary. Here is Padre Serra Parish.
That's where Liam Kidney was pastor.
That's where Liam Kidney built the place. Yeah.
Was Jim
And so
Staley there?
Who?
Do you know Jim Staley?
I think he is.
Well, he was. I think he's pastor St. Jude's in Westlake Village now.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, but he's
Then
always
we're-
been in that area. Yeah.
Yeah. And then we're going down, what is it? Callegas Creek here. And down.
Does it ever
Solis
get,
Road.
does that creek ever get water in it, do you think?
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
Tim, I remember years ago going when it was almost flooded.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then down here is El Tecolote.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Of
Yeah.
happy memory.
Happy memory of El Tecolote. Yep. So,
I'm looking at how densely packed that whole area is.
oh yeah, very much so. And
Welcome
this
to
area
Southern Cal.
directly to the south, which was all fields and gullies, is now largely an industrial park.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like warehouses,
Yeah.
business, but yeah, wow. And so, Johnny, you were talking about the view from where the housing development is looking. Are you looking down on the seminary?
You would be, yeah, this,
Yeah, you go up the
Is that
hill.
high? Is that
at
higher
the old
ground?
college, you would look down on the seminary, yeah.
Oh,
So
okay.
the backyard view of these houses would probably be the seminary. So
I bet the dirt biking in the riverbed is a lot of fun for people. Yeah.
probably is.
Christ.
Probably is. Let me see how I can get out of this now. Stop sharing.
There we
Okay,
go.
yeah.
Good, thank you. That was interesting.
And so, Frank Daly, how do you know that area?
I lived over the hill in Thousand Oaks in
Oh, you did. Okay.
Newbury Park.
All right.
And in Thousand Oaks, I was there for 13 years.
Where you were with Grumman, right? Northrop Grumman.
Yeah.
Back in the day,
So I
when-
commuted to the corporate headquarters in West Los Angeles
Okay.
from Thousand
Okay.
Oaks.
Okay. All right. Okay. I'm just curious because I
Century
think I had
City
a
was in.
yeah, because I had some buddies that I graduated from college with that were math majors. We would have graduated in '64, and they all got jobs in the defense industry or the space industry because it was huge in '64, '65.
Right.
And I think one of them went to work for Northrop. Were the companies combined back in the middle '60s? Northrop and
No, in the
Grumman?
'90s, there was a consolidation. So
Okay.
like Northrop, when I went to work for Northrop in '84, it was an independent company. But then over time, it bought Litton, it bought Grumman, bought a number of other companies. About 15 large and small companies over the 15 years from 1990 to 2005.
Okay, yeah, because I think one of them worked for either Northrop or Grumman, and they had an office near the LA International. There used to be in the middle '60s. There used to be huge research facilities on the
Yeah,
south side.
That was Northrop. Grumman's
Okay.
major installation. Grumman was based on Long Island, but their major installation was at Point Mugu Naval Station.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was Oxnard, wasn't it? Point Mugu?
Yeah, it's in that
Yeah.
area. Oxford.
Ventura, Oxnard.
Yeah.
Tom, I want to thank you for that trip back that you gave us to see seminary, all
Oh,
that
You're
area.
welcome.
I'll have to confess, I was hoping to have Shavira on the screen when I was going to ask you to zoom in on the baseball and football fields so we could remember some of those college against theology games that we had.
Let's see if I can find it again.
Well,
I
not
thought, Johnny, I thought you wanted the Mexican restaurant.
now, yes.
Okay,
El Tepeyac
no, El Tecolote.
or Tecolote, yeah.
Yeah, okay, here's, this looks like basketball courts, tennis courts, handball courts.
And here's the
But
field.
more baseball and football, yeah.
There's a swimming pool.
Yeah, and there's the field. And then the point would be below all that.
Yeah, the point,
Looking at it, yeah.
I don't think the point exists anymore,
Oh, no, but I mean, that's where, yeah,
but it would have been
right about there. Right,
probably, Yeah, about
Just
where
left.
Padre Sarah Parish. now.
Just to the left of where it says the Grove. Remember, you'd follow that pathway all the way up. That right
You
there.
follow this around, yeah, probably the point was like about here.
Right
What
there.
is the point?
Down on
What-
Padre
what was
Sarah
the-
Parish.
Gary, what was the point? What
was the point of land. It was kind of the last, it was out on the edge of the property. And every so often people would go out there and just take a walk, and that would be kind of the edge of the property. And there was,
I used to run up there and back every day,
Yeah.
almost.
and I remember one time during a retreat, it was one of those nights when, the Santa Ana winds were blowing, and this moon was so bright you could see shadows. And I went up there that night by myself, and I went out and I started to pray out loud. And I remember that experience of just, like, it's like that, what was that woman in, Hannah goes into the temple, and she's praying with her lips are moving, but she's not saying anything. And
Hannah, it's
Phineas,
Hannah.
Phineas thinks that she's drunk. She says, "No, I'm just a lonely old woman pouring my soul out to the Lord." And that was an experience for me. I went out there. I said, "I don't know if you really exist or not. I'm just talking to myself, but I just want to." And I just let myself pour myself out. That was all.
That's a wonderful remembrance. Just
Yeah,
wonderful.
I was out on that point. I remember doing that. Yeah. And I don't know how long it lasted.
Who left us?
I don't know.
Tim,
Tim, yeah.
Tim.
Oh, Tim. Yeah.
Okay, well, I've got to go too. There's
Yeah, And I've got a funeral
some
coming
work
up.
here. So shall we call it an?
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks a
So
lot, Tom.
adios and God
Adios.
bless you all.
Take care, Tom. God bless.
Frank, I'll be in touch. Thank you
See
very
you,
much.
Frank, Gary.
okay.
Fred.